Lucky American coins. Imagine finding an ordinary-looking 1-cent coin in your pocket, a coin that most people would ignore without a second thought, and then discovering that the tiny piece of copper-colored metal in your hand is not quite what it appears to be. Imagine looking closely at the date and seeing the numbers 1, 9, 8, and 7. At first, it seems like nothing more than an old American penny from the 1980s. It has the familiar portrait of Abraham Lincoln on the front, the Lincoln Memorial on the back, and the word Liberty beside the date. But then you notice something unusual. Maybe the date appears doubled. Maybe the letters seem strangely positioned. Maybe the coin has an unusual shape, an off-center strike, a missing section, a dramatic die crack, or a strange appearance that does not match an ordinary 1987 Lincoln cent. Suddenly, the question changes from "is this just a penny" to "could this be a genuine mint error?" That is where the world of coin collecting becomes fascinating. The 1987 United States 1-cent coin belongs to the long-running Lincoln cent series, one of the most collected coin series in American numismatics. The Lincoln cent has been produced for more than a century, and collectors have spent generations examining these small coins for rare dates, unusual varieties, die errors, striking mistakes, and condition rarities. The 1987 cent is not normally considered a rare date because the United States Mint produced enormous quantities of them. However, a coin's overall rarity is not determined by the date alone. A common date can sometimes become highly desirable when it possesses a genuine and dramatic mint error, an exceptionally rare die variety, or an extraordinary state of preservation. The standard 1987 Philadelphia Lincoln cent weighs approximately 2.50 grams, measures about 19 millimeters in diameter, has a plain edge, and is made from copper-plated zinc. PCGS lists the Philadelphia 1987 cent mintage at 4,682,466,931 coins. That enormous production figure is one of the reasons an ordinary circulated 1987 Philadelphia penny is generally worth only its face value, while a high-grade certified example, or a genuine error coin, can bring substantially more. The 1987 D Lincoln cent, struck at the Denver Mint, is also a copper-plated zinc coin weighing 2.50 grams. PCGS lists a mintage of 4,879,389,514 pieces for the 1987 D issue. Because billions were made, the normal 1987 D cent is also common. Yet collectors have identified varieties and unusual pieces within the enormous population of coins produced that year. One example is the 1987 D repunched mint mark variety, catalogued by PCGS as FS501. This is an important reminder that even a common date can have collectible varieties, although a variety should not automatically be confused with a major mint error. The story of the 1987 Lincoln cent begins with the history of the Lincoln cent itself. Abraham Lincoln's image first appeared on the United States 1-cent coin in 1909, marking the centennial of his birth. The original Lincoln cent was designed by Victor David Brenner. For many decades, the reverse featured two wheat ears surrounding the words 1 cent and United States of America. In 1959, the reverse was changed to show the Lincoln Memorial in Washington, D.C., designed by Frank Gasbaro. The 1987 cent therefore belongs to the Lincoln Memorial reverse era, which continued until 2008. On the obverse of a normal 1987 Lincoln cent, the central design is the familiar right-facing portrait of Abraham Lincoln. Above his head appears the inscription, "In God We Trust." To the left is Liberty, and the date 1987 appears on the right. Depending on where the coin was struck, a mint mark may appear beneath the date. A 1987 Philadelphia cent normally has no mint mark, while a 1987 D cent carries a small d identifying the Denver Mint. Collectors should never assume that every 1987 penny without a mint mark is rare. Philadelphia cents from this period normally did not carry a mint mark, so the absence of a mint mark is standard rather than an error. The reverse of the 1987 Lincoln cent features the Lincoln Memorial. Above the building is United States of America. The denomination 1 cent appears below, while the motto E pluribus unum is positioned above the memorial. The initials FG, representing designer Frank Gasparo, appear near the lower right side of the reverse. The Lincoln Memorial design is especially interesting to collectors because the details of the memorial can sometimes help determine whether a coin has a genuine double die or another type of unusual strike. The symbols and inscriptions on the coin also carry historical meaning. In God We Trust is the national motto displayed prominently above Lincoln's portrait. Liberty represents one of the foundational ideals associated with the United States. E pluribus unum, meaning out of many, one, appears on the reverse. The eagle-eyed collector can therefore see that even a small 1 cent coin carries a combination of political history, national identity, artistic design, and American symbolism. But the real excitement begins when someone finds a 1987 penny that appears to have an error. The term error coin is often used too broadly on the internet. Many unusual-looking coins are not actually mint errors. Some have been damaged after leaving the mint. Others have been altered intentionally. Some have been exposed to chemicals, heat, pressure, machinery, or harsh environmental conditions. A coin with scratches, dents, discoloration, or flattening may look unusual, but that does not necessarily make it valuable. A true mint error is generally the result of an abnormality that occurred during the manufacturing process at the mint. This distinction is extremely important when evaluating a potentially valuable 1987 cent. A genuine mint error can occur during several stages of production. The planchette, which is the blank metal disc prepared for striking, can have a problem. The dies used to strike the coin can develop cracks or other abnormalities. The striking process itself can go wrong. A coin may be struck off-center, struck multiple times, struck on an incorrect planchette, or suffer from another recognized production error. The value of such a coin depends heavily on the exact nature of the error, how dramatic it is, how rare it is, and whether professional experts can authenticate it. One of the most visually dramatic errors is an off-center strike. This happens when a coin blank is not properly positioned between the dies at the moment of striking. Instead of receiving the design centered on the blank, part of the design may be missing from the coin because the strike occurs too close to the edge. The more dramatic the off-center strike, the more interesting it may become to collectors. A coin that is only slightly off-center may bring a modest premium, while a major off-center error, with a clearly visible date, can be considerably more desirable. The date is particularly important on an off-center 1987 cent. If the coin is struck so far off-center that the date disappears, the collector may have difficulty proving exactly what year the coin is. When the date remains fully visible, the coin is easier to identify and generally more desirable. If the mint mark is also visible on a Denver example, that can add further interest because the exact issue can be established. Another possibility is a broad strike. A broad strike can occur when the collar that normally surrounds the planchette during striking does not properly contain the metal. The resulting coin can spread outward beyond the normal diameter and may have a flatter, wider appearance. The edges of a broad-struck coin can look different from those of an ordinary cent. Because genuine broad strikes are created during the minting process, they can be collectible, especially when the error is dramatic and clearly attributable to the mint. A related type of error is a capped die error. This can happen when a struck coin sticks to a die and then acts like a cap as additional coins are struck. Over time, the trapped coin can become distorted into a shape resembling a bottle cap. These errors can be extremely dramatic and are often fascinating to collectors. However, a true cap die error is quite different from a coin that has simply been bent or damaged outside the mint. A die crack is another phenomenon that can appear on a 1987 cent. As dies are used repeatedly, they can develop cracks. When a cracked die strikes a coin, a raised line can appear on the surface. Some die cracks are minor and may have little value beyond curiosity. Others can become dramatic and highly collectible. If a die crack is large, distinctive, and found on multiple examples, collectors may study it as a die variety or die state. A cud is an even more dramatic form of die-related error. A cud generally occurs when part of a die breaks away, leaving a raised area of metal on the struck coin where the missing die portion affected the design. Depending on the size and location of the cud, the coin can become much more interesting to collectors. A large cud that dramatically interrupts the design can be particularly desirable. Collectors also encounter die clashes. A die clash can occur when opposing dies come into contact without a planchette between them. This can leave unintended impressions from one die on the other. When that damaged die subsequently strikes coins, traces of the opposing design may appear in unexpected areas. A genuine clash can be fascinating because it represents a specific event in the life of the die. Then there is the possibility of a double die. The phrase double die is one of the most frequently misunderstood expressions in coin collecting. Many people see what appears to be doubling on a coin and immediately assume that they have discovered a valuable double die. In reality, true double dies are created during the die-making process and are different from mechanical doubling, strike doubling, or other forms of distortion. Mechanical doubling can make letters, numbers, or design elements appear flattened or shifted. It is often less valuable than a true double die. A genuine double die, on the other hand, can represent a collectible variety created when the hubbing process produces a double design on the die itself. The distinction can be difficult for beginners to identify, which is why professional authentication can be important when the potential value is significant. A 1987 cent showing apparent doubling should therefore be examined carefully. The date, Liberty, In God We Trust, and reverse lettering can all be inspected. However, not every unusual appearance is a recognized double die. Lighting, photography, wear, damage, and the angle of the strike can all create misleading visual effects. One of the most important things a collector can do is weigh the coin. A standard 1987 copper-plated zinc cent should weigh approximately 2.50 grams. A precision scale capable of measuring to at least 0.01 gram can be extremely useful. If a coin weighs substantially more or less than expected, it may deserve further investigation. However, weight alone does not prove that a coin is valuable. Dirt, corrosion, plating damage, wear, environmental exposure, or a damaged planchette can all affect weight. The composition of the 1987 cent is also important. These cents were made with a zinc core covered by a thin copper layer. This composition differs from the older bronze Lincoln cents produced before the change to copper-plated zinc. Because of this construction, damage to the copper plating can expose the zinc core beneath. A coin with a silvery or gray area is not automatically a rare wrong metal error. Sometimes the copper plating has simply been damaged or worn away. This is one of the most common sources of confusion among people searching their change for valuable pennies. A genuine wrong planchette error is much more unusual. If a coin is struck on a planchette intended for another denomination or another composition, the result can be highly collectible. But proving that a 1987 cent was struck on the wrong planchette requires careful analysis. The weight, diameter, thickness, metal composition, and design characteristics must all be considered. A coin that merely looks silver is not enough to establish a wrong planchette error. This is where professional grading and authentication become extremely important. Organizations such as PCGS and NGC have extensive experience examining coins and determining their authenticity, grade, and varieties. A professional certification can help distinguish a genuine mint error from post-mint damage or an altered coin. If someone believes that a 1987 cent could be an extraordinary error worth thousands of dollars, professional examination is usually far safer than relying on an online photograph or an unverified social media claim. The condition of the coin is another major factor. Coin collectors use grading systems to describe the amount of wear and the quality of preservation. Circulated coins may show wear on Lincoln's hair, cheek, jaw, and other high points. Uncirculated coins can retain their original mint luster. The highest grades are reserved for coins with exceptional surfaces, strong strikes, and very few imperfections. For modern Lincoln cents, the difference between a typical uncirculated coin and an exceptionally high-grade coin can be significant. PCGS records that a 1987 Philadelphia cent graded MS-69 Road sold for $1,920 at Heritage Auctions on April 6, 2025. That is a real documented high-grade result and provides a much more realistic benchmark than claims of a $283 million value. PCGS also records auction history for other grades. For example, a 1987 Philadelphia cent graded MS-68 Road was recorded at $135 in a 2018 auction listing, while an MS-67 Road example was recorded at $15 in 2020. These figures demonstrate how dramatically value can vary according to grade and market demand. The 1987 D cent presents a different picture. Because billions were struck at Denver, the normal issue is common. However, the highest grade examples can still attract attention. PCGS lists an MS-69 Road auction record of $12,000 for a 1987 D cent, with the sale recorded on eBay in 2023. Because that result comes from an eBay transaction rather than a major traditional auction house, collectors should treat it as a market data point rather than proof that every high-grade 1987 D cent is worth thousands of dollars. This brings us to the sensational claim of a $283 million 1987 penny. A claim of $283 million would place an ordinary 1987 cent among the most extraordinarily valuable coins in the history of numismatics. Such a valuation would require extraordinary evidence. There would need to be a documented sale, a recognized auction record, an authenticated specimen, or another highly credible source supporting the figure. At present, there is no reliable evidence that a 1987 Lincoln cent has sold for $283 million. This does not mean that error coins are worthless. Quite the opposite. Genuine errors can be fascinating and valuable. But responsible coin collecting requires separating verified information from sensational claims. A viral video may say that a certain penny is worth millions. A social media post may display a photograph with an enormous asking price. An online marketplace may show a seller listing an ordinary coin for an absurd amount. None of these things automatically establishes market value. An asking price is not the same as a sale price. This is an important lesson for anyone searching for valuable coins. If a seller lists a 1987 penny for $283 million, that does not mean someone is willing to pay $283 million for it. The only meaningful evidence of market value comes from actual transactions, credible auction records, certified price data, and expert evaluation. For a collector examining a 1987 Lincoln cent, the first step is to identify exactly what coin they have. Is it a Philadelphia cent with no mint mark? Is it a Denver cent with AD? Is it a proof coin? Is it a regular business strike? Is it damaged? Is it an unusual variety? Is it a genuine error? The next step is to examine the date and mint mark under good lighting. A magnifying glass or digital microscope can be useful. The collector should inspect the numbers in 1987 for signs of unusual doubling, but they should avoid assuming that every irregularity is valuable. The same careful examination should be applied to Liberty and In God We Trust. The reverse should also be inspected. Look closely at the Lincoln Memorial. Are there any missing details? Are there raised lines that could represent die cracks? Is there a large area of metal that appears to have broken away from the die? Is the coin unusually broad or distorted? Does the edge appear normal? Does the coin have a strange shape that could indicate an off-center strike? The edge is especially important. A normal 1987 Lincoln cent has a plain edge. If the edge shows unusual characteristics, the coin may deserve further investigation. However, collectors must be careful because edge damage is extremely common. A coin dropped on a hard surface can develop dents. A coin caught in machinery can become flattened. A coin can also be squeezed, bent, or otherwise damaged after leaving the mint. The challenge is to determine whether the unusual feature occurred at the mint or after the coin entered circulation. This distinction is at the heart of error coin collecting. Consider an off-center coin. If the entire design is shifted and part of the original blank is visibly missing from the strike, that may be a genuine mint error. But if someone takes a normal penny and physically bends it, cuts it, or damages it, the result is not a mint error. The coin may look unusual, but it does not have the same numismatic significance. The same principle applies to color. A 1987 penny that appears silver could attract immediate attention. But before assuming it is a rare wrong metal error, the collector should consider whether the copper plating has been removed. Zinc exposed by damaged plating can appear gray or silver. Chemical exposure can also change a coin's color. Professional testing may be necessary to determine the actual composition. A scale can help. If the coin is dramatically outside the expected 2.50 gram weight, the possibility of an unusual planchette should be investigated. But if the weight is close to 2.50 grams, that does not rule out every possible error. Some errors do not significantly change the weight. The date 1987 is particularly interesting because the coin was produced during a period when the copper-plated zinc composition was firmly established. That means collectors should be cautious about sensational claims involving a rare copper 1987 penny. A coin that appears copper-colored is normal. Most 1987 cents were intentionally made with a copper outer layer over a zinc core. The value of a normal 1987 penny is therefore usually modest. A circulated Philadelphia or Denver example may generally be worth about 1 cent. An uncirculated coin may have a small premium depending on grade. A high-grade certified coin can be worth more. An exceptional MS-69 example can bring a much higher price than a common circulated penny. A genuine major mint error can potentially be worth considerably more than a normal coin, with value determined by rarity and collector demand. The exact value cannot be determined from the year alone. This is one of the most important messages for anyone creating content about rare coins. The words 1987 penny are not enough to establish a price. The coin's mint mark, condition, error type, authentication status, and market history all matter. Collectors should also understand the difference between a variety and an error. A variety is generally a recurring difference that results from the preparation or use of a die. A double die can be a variety. A repunched mint mark can be a variety. A die crack may represent a particular die state. An error, by contrast, often results from an unusual event during production, such as an off-center strike or wrong planchette. The distinction can sometimes become complicated, and terminology can vary depending on the specific situation. This is why advanced collectors often consult specialized references and professional attribution services. The 1987 D repunched mint mark is an interesting example because it shows how a common date can still contain collectible die varieties. PCGS catalogs a 1987 DRPM FS 501 variety. Such a coin should not be confused with a random-looking mark near the mint mark. Proper attribution requires comparing the coin with known references and identifying the characteristic features of the recognized variety. For someone who discovers an unusual 1987 cent, the safest approach is simple. Do not clean it. Do not polish it. Do not scrape it. Do not try to make the error look more dramatic. Do not use chemicals to change the color. Do not attempt to straighten a bent coin. And do not remove material from the coin. Cleaning can permanently reduce collector value, and altering a coin can make authentication more difficult. If the coin appears promising, it is usually better to preserve it exactly as found. The best way to handle a potentially valuable coin is to place it in a suitable protective holder and seek expert advice. Photography can also help. Take clear photographs of both sides, the edge, and any unusual areas. Use natural or neutral lighting. Avoid extreme filters that could make ordinary features appear dramatic. If possible, include a ruler or scale for reference, but do not allow the measuring device to scratch the coin. A good photograph can help experts determine whether the coin deserves further examination, but a photograph alone cannot always authenticate a major error. This is especially important when dealing with claims of extraordinary values. If someone says a 1987 penny is worth $283 million, the first question should be simple: where is the documented sale? If the answer is that the coin was merely listed online, that is not proof. If the answer is that a video claimed the value, that is not proof. If the answer is that someone estimated the value without an auction record, that is not proof. If the answer is that the coin is extremely rare, without professional authentication, that is not proof. A genuine $283 million sale would be an extraordinary event in the world of numismatics, and would require extensive documentation. For comparison, the documented PCGS data for ordinary 1987 Lincoln cents demonstrates a far more realistic market range. The Philadelphia MS-69 road example, recorded at $1,920 in 2025, is an exceptional high-grade result for the regular issue, while other certified grades have sold for much less. The 1987 DMS-69 road example, with a recorded $12,000 eBay sale, shows that top-condition examples can attract strong attention, but these figures are still dramatically different from $283 million. The key lesson is that rarity must be demonstrated, not simply claimed. A 1987 penny with a genuine, dramatic, authenticated error could certainly be an exciting discovery. It could be worth more than face value. In some cases, unusual mint errors can sell for hundreds or thousands of dollars, depending on the error and demand. But each coin must be judged individually. Imagine, for example, that someone finds a 1987 cent that is dramatically off-center, with the full date visible and a large portion of the design missing from one side. Such a coin could be much more interesting than a normal penny. If professional graders authenticate the error, the coin could become a desirable collectible. Now imagine a different coin that looks slightly off-center, but has heavy circulation damage and no clear evidence of a minting error. That coin might bring little or no premium. The difference between these two examples demonstrates why expert authentication matters. The same is true for doubled dies. A dramatic, genuine doubled die can be collectible. A weak mechanical doubling effect may have little additional value. The visual difference can sometimes be subtle, and beginners may easily mistake one for the other. This is why collectors should avoid relying on exaggerated internet claims. The world of coin collecting is full of excitement, but it is also full of misinformation. The possibility of discovering something rare is real, But so is the possibility of misunderstanding what has been found. A 1987 Lincoln cent is a perfect example. Billions were produced. Most are ordinary. Yet among billions of coins, unusual pieces can sometimes survive. The challenge is finding them, identifying them correctly, and proving what they are. The historical importance of the Lincoln cent also adds to its appeal. Abraham Lincoln remains one of the most recognizable figures in American history. His portrait on the cent has become one of the longest-running coin designs in the United States. Millions of Americans have carried Lincoln cents in their pockets, placed them in jars, dropped them under furniture, and passed them through vending machines and cash registers. A 1987 penny therefore represents a small piece of everyday American history. It was produced during the late 20th century, a period of major technological and cultural change. The coin itself was manufactured using modern minting processes and copper-plated zinc planchets. It circulated through an economy that was rapidly changing. It may have been carried by workers, students, families, travelers, and collectors. And after nearly 4 decades, some examples remain in remarkably high condition. That is why condition rarity matters. A coin can be common in circulated grades, but difficult to find in the highest grades. This is especially true when collectors compete for registry sets and finest known examples. The difference between a coin that has been heavily circulated and one that has survived decades with nearly flawless surfaces can be enormous. The red designation is also important for modern copper-plated zinc cents. Collectors often distinguish between brown, and red examples. A red coin has retained much of its original reddish copper appearance. Since color can affect desirability, a high-grade red example can command a premium over a similar coin that has darkened or toned. But once again, collectors must be careful. Artificially altered color is not the same as natural original color. A coin that has been treated or chemically altered may not receive the same market response as a naturally preserved specimen. Professional grading services can identify problems and may refuse to assign a normal numerical grade to coins that have been improperly altered. The best 1987 Lincoln cents are therefore not simply old coins. They are coins that combine condition, originality, eye appeal, and sometimes rarity. The most valuable 1987 cent is not necessarily the one with the most dramatic story. It is the one that has the strongest combination of verified characteristics and actual market demand. This is why a collector should always ask several questions. What is the exact mint and issue? What is the weight? What is the diameter? Is the coin genuine? Is the unusual feature a mint error or post-mint damage? Is the error recognized by professional experts? Has the coin been authenticated? What grade does it receive? Are there comparable auction sales? How rare is the specific error? How many examples are known? Are collectors actively seeking it? These questions are much more valuable than simply asking, how much is this penny worth? The 1987 cent is also an excellent reminder that a coin's face value and collector value are two completely different concepts. Its face value is 1 cent. Its collectible value can be higher. Its value as a certified high-grade coin can be higher still. Its value as a rare, dramatic, authenticated error could potentially be significantly higher. But the value must be supported by evidence. There is no credible basis for automatically calling a 1987 cent a $283 million coin. That statement should not discourage collectors. Instead, it should encourage them to look more carefully. The real excitement is not necessarily in believing that every unusual penny is worth a fortune. The real excitement is in learning how to identify the rare ones. A collector who understands weight, composition, mint marks, die varieties, errors, grading, and auction records, has a much better chance of recognizing a genuinely interesting coin. Suppose you find a 1987 penny in an old collection. You notice that it weighs 2.50 grams. It has no mint mark. The design appears normal. There are some scratches on Lincoln's cheek, and a little discoloration around the edge. That coin is probably an ordinary 1987 Philadelphia cent. Now suppose you find another 1987 penny. The weight is correct, but the coin is dramatically off-center, the date is fully visible, and the edge shows characteristics consistent with a mint strike. That coin deserves further investigation. Then imagine finding a 1987D with a recognized repunched mint mark variety. That could be collectible, but the exact value would depend on condition, attribution, and demand. Finally, imagine discovering a coin that appears to have been struck on a completely different planchette. That would be a potentially significant discovery, but professional authentication would be essential. The progression from ordinary coin to collectible variety to major mint era demonstrates how complicated the market can be. The phrase "worth big money" should therefore always be treated carefully. A coin can be interesting without being extremely valuable. A coin can be rare without being worth millions. A coin can be valuable without having a famous story. And a coin can look spectacular while actually being damaged after leaving the mint. This is why experienced collectors learn to slow down. They do not immediately clean the coin. They do not immediately sell it. They do not immediately believe an internet valuation. They study it. They weigh it. They photograph it. They compare it. They research it. And when the evidence suggests something important, they submit it to professionals. The 1987 Lincoln cent may not be a $283 million coin, but that does not make it boring. In fact, its enormous production numbers make the search for unusual examples even more interesting. When billions of coins are produced, the possibility of finding unusual manufacturing events becomes a fascinating part of the hobby. The collector is not simply looking for an old penny. The collector is looking for a story. Maybe the story is a die that developed a dramatic crack. Maybe the story is a planchette that entered the press incorrectly. Maybe the story is a double die created during die preparation. Maybe the story is an off-center strike caused by a problem during production. Maybe the story is a rare variety that escaped into circulation. Or maybe the story is simply that an ordinary 1987 penny survived nearly 40 years in extraordinary condition. Each possibility has its own appeal. That is what makes Lincoln cents so popular. They are accessible. They are inexpensive to search. They are historically significant. And occasionally, they can surprise you. If you have a 1987 penny, the best thing you can do is examine it carefully without assuming that it is automatically rare. Check the mint mark. Check the weight. Inspect the date. Examine the lettering. Look at the reverse. Study the edge. Compare it with trusted references. If you find something genuinely unusual, seek professional advice. The difference between a 1-cent coin and a valuable collectible can sometimes be hidden in a tiny detail. But that tiny detail must be real. In the end, the story of the 1987 Lincoln cent is not really a story about a guaranteed $283 million fortune. It is a story about the difference between ordinary coins and extraordinary discoveries. It is a story about history, manufacturing, design, collecting, and the patience required to identify something unusual. The normal 1987 Lincoln cent is a product of mass production, with billions made at Philadelphia and Denver. Its standard specifications include a weight of approximately 2.50 grams, a diameter of about 19 millimeters, a plain edge, and a copper-plated zinc composition. The Philadelphia issue has no mint mark, while the Denver issue carries AD. The coin features Victor David Brenner's portrait of Abraham Lincoln on the obverse and Frank Gasparo's Lincoln Memorial reverse. For ordinary examples, the value is usually close to face value, especially when circulated. Higher grades can bring premiums, and exceptional certified examples have achieved much stronger prices. Genuine errors and varieties can add another layer of value, but the exact error must be identified and authenticated. The most responsible conclusion is therefore this: if you own a 1987 Lincoln cent, do not assume it is worth $283 million. But do not automatically throw it away either. Look at it. Measure it. Study it. And if you see something that truly does not belong, investigate it. Because somewhere among the billions of Lincoln cents produced during the modern era, unusual coins have survived. Some have dramatic errors. Some have rare varieties. Some have extraordinary grades. And some have become prized collectibles. The thrill of the hobby is discovering which one is which. And perhaps that is the most valuable lesson of all. A coin's true worth is not created by a viral headline. It is established by authenticity, rarity, condition, historical significance, collector demand, and the evidence of the marketplace. So when you hold a 1987 Lincoln cent in your hand, remember that you are holding a small piece of American history. It may be worth only 1 cent. It may be worth a few dollars. It may be worth considerably more if it is an exceptional certified example or a genuine mint error. But whatever its market value, the journey of discovering what makes that tiny coin special is what keeps collectors searching through jars, rolls, drawers, old collections, and pocket change. And that search continues today, because the next unusual 1987 Lincoln cent could still be waiting to be found.